Hi. Um, the most interesting conversation I saw online this week relating to sort of game design was about combat and conflict in games. Now, so many, I probably go as far as 99% of all role-playing games have combat as one of their core components. And for a while, I saw something that once that someone said, well, you shouldn't have combat rules at all. You should just have conflict resolution. So it doesn't matter whether you are trying to pick a lock or negotiate a deal or hit someone with a sword. It's all just skill resolution, and it's all kind of opposed tests. Rather than having kind of this whole rules light approach where you kind of go, well, this is how you pick locks, how you negotiate, and then this massive chunk in the middle of the book of this is how you kill people, and then some a bit afterwards about how to run an adventure. And I adopted that approach, and I think it's Devil's Staircase, the Wild West. It I can't remember exactly the wording, but it doesn't actually have a combat section in the rules. It just has sort of how to fire a gun and how to lasso a horse and how to blow up a safe, all that skill resolution type approach. But it doesn't have actual explicit um, combat rules set as a chapter. It does explain how to do certain combat maneuvers. So that was an old conversation, and I can certainly see the value in it. The conversation I saw this week was someone was looking for games which weren't combat focused, and I made a few suggestions like Tales from the Loop, Kids on Bikes, um, and I also thought of some of the narrative uh, sort of solo games. They are uh, you, they're not certainly not combat related, combat centric. And someone pointed out, and I've actually forgotten the name of it. Uh, the actual name of the game. It was by Jason Cordova, and it's basically like Murder She Wrote, or Miss Marple, where it's sort of retired sort of sleuths investigating of unexplained deaths and things. And there's certainly no combat involved. When was the last time you saw Jessica Fletcher pull a gun and shoot the culprit down? It just doesn't happen. So you don't have to have the combat in the game. And I was thinking about sort of gumshoe systems where it's all about putting the clues together. It does have combat rules. It does have ways of resolving combat, but it's certainly not necessary. Uh, but I'm sure that most gumshoe games at the table do go into combat. I know mine certainly do. And so I was someone then interjected that there was a that although the games we were suggesting as not having combat or not being combat centric were heavy with conflict, and it's true. It's there is always a conflict. There will be a murderer and Jessica Fletcher trying to solve it, and they're obviously opposed. And I don't think having conflict in games is a bad thing at all. I'm not entirely sure without conflict there is any game to be played. Certainly not in the role-playing genre. Conflict is also a challenge. You can be challenged or conflict with over picking that lock, or negotiating something. It is still an opposed. There is still the risk of success and failure. So, and as soon as you've got somebody else that you've got with an opposing view, then you're going to have some kind of conflict, whether it's mild conflict or you a vehement conflict. So I don't think that's a bad thing at all. But it did throw up this idea of what are the games without any conflict, and I couldn't actually think of any at all. The closest I personally have ever come to that is I did a set of solo rules for Morgoths versus Visigoths, or it could be Visigoths versus Morgoths. Um, Now that does have combat, but it's always non-lethal. Um, there's no death in the game. And I also did a narrative game called Unfinished Waterloo. Now I didn't invent the Unfinished game, but that is on Drive Through as a Creative Commons game, and it's meant to be played with at least two people. I created a solo iteration of it. It was meant to be, and probably still will be, a series of narrative games when I get back into that sort of thing. And in Unfinished Waterloo, your character actually starts off dead. It takes place after you have died, but you have not moved on to the afterlife. And the nature of the game is there's certain questions to ask about your character, about the unfinished business in the what did they not do when they were alive, and then it's kind of answering these questions. So you learn about your character and what they did and what they regret and that sort of thing uh, by talking to a sort of a spirit guide. And then once you've resolved all your unfinished business and unburdened this character of whatever they had not finished in their life, then your character moves on, and then that's the end of the game. And it's called Waterloo because your character died at the Battle of Waterloo. It's a life cut short. So, and I was thinking of doing iterations of that at other key moments in time. Um, I wish I hadn't said that. Key moments. Uh, so you can bring in that kind of whole historical aspect, and each you know, moment in history will, yeah, and how the characters died would influence the characters' beliefs, goals, aims in life. But that again is a game which no combat and no real conflict. The person may be conflicted. You may be reflecting back on conflicts and how they went one way or the other, but there's no actual conflict. And so yeah, that was the only thing that you know, I could sort of offer into the conversation. But it did make me think about if you're going to if you're a game designer as opposed to an adventure writer or a rule supplement creator, how do we you know, so many games just become more ways of killing monsters or killing aliens or killing bad people. um, how to differentiate your game? Can you make your game exciting without ultimately going down to roll to hit and roll damage? It's certainly an interesting idea as a designer to think about it and look at any partial designs you've got and see how they deal with it. And there's a few people that I work with online, and we started to a game called Things Adults Cannot See. It's a pay what you want on drive through, an early version of it. We've got another version which is uh, it's been revised since the version that's on drive-through, but that has it certainly has conflict. It's a children's game aimed to be played by children. It's sort of very early teens, or sort of say eight to 12, or eight to 14, or something like that. Um, and that way we again it definitely has conflict, but in a very non-violent way. So yeah, that's just my thought. This is a bit of a rambling video today, but it's just a general idea of if you're designing something,
Um,
Have a look. Are you falling into the trap of making it into just another killing game? Okay, that's it really for today. Thank you for watching.